Welcome to the video for angles. Today we're going to start off by looking at some vocabulary. So when we look at angles, there's some vocab that we need to know. The first word we have here is vertical angles. Remember, vertical angles are angles that are across from each other or directly opposite from each other. Adjacent angles are angles that are right next to each other. And then we have complementary angles. Those are angles that add up to 90 degrees. And supplementary angles are angles that add up to 180 degrees. And remember, we taught you that little trick that the C in complementary kind of could be turned into a 9, so that reminds us that the complementary is for 90 degrees. So off to the side, you might want to give yourself that C in one color and then make it into a 90. Similarly, the S in supplementary can be made to look like 180 degrees. So you can see off to the side, we kind of want to draw that so that we remember that the C for complementary kind of looks like the 9 and the 90, and then that the S in supplementary can be made to look like 180 degrees, and then that reminds us of the degree measures. And my secret message is I just wrote a 90 and a 180 in the side that I asked you to add in. Can you add the degree symbol? Remember, that's that little circle. So it's a small little circle, looks like a superscript up in the sky. All right, so I want you to add that into there. Then let's look at an example together. So in number 1 here, we have a question that is showing us two lines intersecting, and we have all these angles, 1, 2, 3, and 4. They're asking us to name two pairs of vertical angles. So remember, a pair of angles means the two angles that are going to be across from each other. So if I look at my picture, so if I just pick an angle, I'm just going to start with angle number 1. What would be directly opposite of it? Well, directly across from it, or opposite of it, would be this angle number 3. So one pair of vertical angles would be angle 1 and angle 3. We usually use arc marks to show this. So that's one of the pairs of vertical angles. Okay, so for another pair, so that's just one pair of vertical angles. Another pair, if I look at the other angle I haven't used yet, would be 2. And directly across from that would be angle 4. So angle 2 and angle 4 are vertical angles as well. The next one says name a pair of adjacent angles. So again, these all go back to vocab. So in the first question, we had to know what vertical angles meant. In this question, we have to know what adjacent angles mean. So adjacent angles are angles that are right next to each other. They kind of make up a linear pair. So angles that are right next to each other would be, example, angle 1 and 2. These angles are directly next to each other. They make one straight line here. Adjacent, right next to each other. So angle 1 and 2. And then we could keep going through that. So 1 and 2, but then we could also say 2 and 3. They're right next to each other. Or 3 and 4. Or 4 and 1. So we have 4 different options here. So name 2 pairs of adjacent angles. I'm going to give you 1 and 2, and then 2 and 3. But remember, we can also have those other options, and they were the angle 3 and angle 4, and then the angle 4 and angle 1. So any of those combinations would be fine. You could do angle 1 and angle 2 and angle 4 and angle 1, angle 2 and angle 3 and angle 3 and angle 4, any pair, but it said to name 2 pairs of adjacent angles. So like 1 and 2, that's one pair. So you had to have a second one to get that answer correct. Okay, let's look at number 2. In number 2 here, this is telling us to classify each angle, identifying it as either acute, obtuse, right, or straight. So again, to answer this question, we need the vocab. What is an acute angle? What is an obtuse angle? What is a right angle? And what is a straight angle? So remember, acute is less than 90 degrees but greater than 1 degree. Like, it can't be a 0, no degree. That wouldn't be an angle at all. An obtuse angle is greater than 90 but less than 180, and that's not including 180, because if it's 180 degrees, it's a straight angle. And a right angle means it has that 90-degree mark. Remember, we can't assume that an angle is a right angle unless we have this little square in here to show us that is a 90-degree angle. So let's classify these 3 angles. So this first one, I can tell, well, a 90 would be straight up, so this is opened up more than 90, so that would make this first one an obtuse angle. The next one does have that little box in there showing that this is definitely a right angle. And then this last one is smaller than 90 degrees, and so I can tell that that is an acute angle. If it were a straight angle, it would be like a straight line. That's how we would know a straight angle. Okay, so that's the answer for number 2. Let's try number 3. All right, so number 3 here tells us that we want to name this angle in 4 different ways. So remember, when we talk about labeling an angle, we need the angle measure. And really what needs to happen is it needs to outline the angle. So if I say the letters in a way that does not outline the angle, it would not work. So for example, if I tried to name this angle and I looked at it and I said, okay, I'm going to name it angle TVU. See how I did not outline my angle when I tried to do that, T to V to U? It has to outline the angle or it's not a proper way to name the angle. So for example, a proper way would be to say, let's start at T, but then I have to go to U to V. Angle TUV would be one proper way to name this angle. Another way where, again, I still want to outline the angle, so another way to do that would be, instead of going from T first, you could start at V first. So you could say angle VUT. A third way, since there's only this one vertex here, I could just say angle U. It's by itself, angle U. And the fourth way, because we have this number inside of here identifying this angle as angle 2, we can also just say that it is angle 2. So the big idea here is just making sure that we always trace the angle. They have to go in a way that if I start out and go through the letters the way that you are naming them, it will outline the angle that was given. All right, let's look at number 4. Okay, so more vocab here. This question is saying classify the angles as either complementary or supplementary, or it could be that they're not really either one. They're not complementary or supplementary. So in order to answer this, I have to know what those two words mean. So remember, complementary means adding up to 90 degrees, and supplementary means adding up to 180 degrees. So to find out, let's try adding this. 105 plus 75. When we do that, we get 180. So that tells me these two angles are supplementary. So for the next one, let's again try these. So 30 plus 60, if it's a 30 degree and a 60 degrees, add them up, and we end up with 90. So that means those are complementary. So you had to know that supplementary means they add up to 180 degrees, and complementary means that they add up to 90 degrees in order to answer that question. Let's look at number 5. So for number 5, it says we need to write and solve an equation to find the value of x and then find the measure of the missing angle. So the missing angle means that I'm going to need to find this angle, the 3x. I know this one is 39 degrees. I don't know what this one is. So in order to write the equation, first I have to think to myself, well, what do these two angles do? Since I see the box over here, I know that these two angles are complementary, meaning they add up to 90 degrees. So my equation is going to add those two angles and equal to 90 degrees. So then I set up my equation. I have 3x plus 39 will equal the 90 degrees. So now we need to draw our line down the equation to solve for x. So what's happening to the x, it's being multiplied by 3, and then we're adding 39. So to solve, we're going to do the opposite in the opposite order. So instead of adding the 39, we're going to start by subtracting 39 to both sides. So the 39 minus 39 will cancel and give me 0. I'll be left with 3x on the left side. And 90 minus 39 on the right will give me 51 on the right-hand side. So continuing to try to get my x by itself, the 3 is connected to the x with multiplication. So what's the opposite of multiplying by 3? To divide both sides by 3. So we're going to set up the division on each side by 3. Anything divided by itself will cancel, so the 3 divided by 3 will cancel. So on the left-hand side, I'm left with just an x. And then on the right-hand side, 51 divided by 3 gives us 17. So my x value is 17. But if I look, the question didn't ask me to solve for x. It said that I needed to find the measure of the missing angle. So it started out by saying write So we wrote the equation and solve it for the value of x. So that's the first part that I just did. But I'm not done. It said, and then find the measure of the missing angle. So the missing angle is that 3x. So finding x is part of the question. Now I need to take that and sub it into my missing angle. So I'm going to start by rewriting the missing angle, which is this 3x. But now that we've solved for x, I don't need to have the x in there anymore. I can take the answer, the 17, and sub it in place of the x variable. So instead of 3x, this will be rewritten as 3 times 17. And I always use the parentheses when I'm subbing something in, just to remind myself that subbing in, when the variable is right next to a coefficient there, that tells me I'm going to need to multiply. So I'm going to take that 17, multiply by 3, and I get my answer of 51. So the missing angle is 51. And because it's an angle, I'm going to put that degrees symbol in there. So my answer is 51 degrees. So that is the missing angle. Now remember, we can also check. So now I've found my missing angle. I solved for x. I found my missing angle. But I want to make sure that my answer is correct. So to do that, we're going to sub in my answer and add it to the 39. If I did everything correctly, they should add back up to the 90 degrees altogether. So for my check, I have the 39 plus 51 equals 90. 90 does equal 90. So this tells me that I did check my answer and it is correct. It added back up to what I expected. So my missing angle is 51 degrees and x is 17. All right, let's look at the last question, number 6. Number 6 tells us to write and solve an equation to find, so write and solve an equation to find the value of x. Then we're also going to use x to find the measure of the missing angles. So in order to solve this question, I need to start by writing out an equation. So what do we know about a triangle? Well, hopefully we remember that a triangle, all 3 of the angles in a triangle will add up to 180 degrees. So to start off by writing my equation, I needed to remember that the 3 angles in a triangle add up to 180 degrees. So I'm going to start by writing my equation. I started by writing the 3x plus the 2x, but that's not all 3 angles, that's only 2 of them. Remember, this little box in the corner here reminds me that this is a 90-degree angle. So the 3x plus the 2x, but I also need to add the 90 degrees that's in that right angle in the corner of my triangle here. Those 3 angles all together will add up to the 180 degrees. So now that I've written my equation, I need to solve my equation. So we're going to start by putting that line down the equal sign, and that reminds me to do whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. I try to avoid going over that equal sign, so to start off, we're going to put together any like terms that we have. So I see a 3x and a 2x on the left side of the equation. Before I try moving things over the line, I can put those together. So the 3x plus the 2x gives me 5x. So 5x plus 90 will equal the 180. Now I'm looking to get the x by itself. It's being multiplied by 5 and then adding 90. We're going to do the opposite in the opposite order. So to get that plus 90 away, we're going to subtract 90 from both sides. The opposite of adding 90 is to subtract 90. So then the 90 minus 90 will cancel. That becomes a 0. So on the left side, I'm left with a 5x. And on the right side, I have 180 minus 90 gives me 90. Now to get the x by itself, it's being multiplied by 5, so the opposite would be to divide by 5. When I divide both sides by that 5, 90 divided by 5 will give me my answer, x equals 18. Now we might be tempted to say, okay, I've solved the question, I answered what they asked me to, I wrote the equation, and I solved for x. But the question also said we needed to find the missing angles. So I need to find what these 2 angles are. So the 3x in this little angle, I'm going to put it in here because there's 2 missing angles and I want to remind myself which one goes where. So the 3x, instead of being 3x, we're going to replace that x with our answer, the 18. So 3 times the 18 gives me 54, and then because it's an angle, I'm going to fill in with the degree symbol. So that angle is 54 degrees. The other one is the 2x. I'm going to do the same thing with that one. Instead of being 2x, I'm going to do 2 times replacing that x with the 18, and I get 36, and that again is an angle measure, so I'm going to put the degree symbol. So the last part of my answer is finding those missing angles, that this one is 54 and the 2x becomes this 36. Now I'm not done, because I still need to now take these and make sure that they do add up to 180. So I'm going to add the 54 plus the 36 plus 90 to make sure it does equal 180. So to write out that check, I have the 54 plus 36 plus 90. Hopefully it does equal 180. I'm not sure yet. I can't just assume it does. We do need to type that into our calculator. And when we do get 180 degrees, which tells me that the answer does check, and I'm confident that I have done this correctly. Now you're going to try more questions on the sandcastle on your own. All right, have a great day.